What's up, everybody? My name is James. Today we're going to go over a track I made called Transformers, and I want to break down my 808 slides and how I kind of did that and how you guys can do that in your own tracks. So let me play a bit of the track. I'm going to play the part without the slides, and then with the slides so you can hear the changes that it made. So you can hear right before the beat drops, it's just kind of a very basic 808 pattern. There isn't much life to it. And then once the beat finally hits, there's a lot going on in terms of where that 808 tone is going. And this is achieved through a few different parts of this technique, I guess. The first, we're going to go through kind of how I set up the 808 here. So it's important to have an 808 that you're able to make a quick loop out of. So there are some that have kind of like a punch and then the pitch kind of changes over time. That's really hard to loop over and over because every time that it jumps back to the start of the loop in that sample, you're going to kind of have like a really weird effect because the pitch is going to be different. So I wouldn't recommend that. It definitely comes down to choosing an 808 that's really good in terms of like being a constant tone all the way through. You can kind of hear by ear what that sounds like, but yeah, so the first part here is this loop that I have set up, and it's accomplished through a few different aspects. So first, make sure you have snap and loop enabled. I think they're enabled by default, but just make sure that they're orange there. And loop is going to allow you to, again, repeat a section of that sample over and over again a bunch of times. And snap, I didn't really actually realize what this did until I played with it a little bit. Snap makes sure that the start and the end of your loop are at 0 decibels. So if we zoom in really close right here, we can see that where this orange line where the loop starts intersects the yellow line, which is kind of the sound wave, we can see that it's perfectly right at 0, right in the middle of that magnifying glass. And again, if I go to the end and I zoom in, that also ends at 0. And that's very important. If I turn it off and I play this loop, which I'll do in a second, you'll hear that there's a lot of like clicking that happens because the start and end of the loop don't match up, and all of a sudden you have this quick little jump. So just enable snap to avoid that. And to tune in your loop and get it to sound right, we're going to use these 3 percentages down here. So the first part, the loop percentage, is where in the sample you want that loop to start. So you can kind of move it around and that'll change where that loop kind of jumps back to every time. And then the length is, again, where that ends in the sample. The fade kind of helps take in a little bit before the start of the loop here. You can see how it kind of comes in, and then it starts to fade out right before the sample ends just to give it a little bit more of a smooth transition. So if I play this here, you'll hear that I can just hold the note for as long as possible, and the 808 is just going to keep going. It's not a perfect tonality and volume loop, but it's good enough for this track, especially in the mix. You won't hear it, but let's just hear what this sounds like. So I can hold it for as long as I want, and the 808 is going to keep going. Now, if I turned off snap, you'll see that now it's kind of above that middle 0 line. And if I play this, there'll probably be some clicking if I turn off the fade. So it's important to have that on. Let's hear what that sounds like. So maybe not right now, but I know if I get, yeah, you can hear that like popping. You don't want that. If I turn on snap and I do that, it's a lot smoother. Then we turn on some fade. It's a much cleaner loop. Now, the next thing that I did is I made sure that 2 voices are enabled because the method I'm going to use to do this glide is we kind of have our bass note, and then we're going to toss in notes either above or below that note, and it's going to kind of drag the pitch to the secondary note that we add. So we need at least 2 voices. We only need 2 voices actually to be able to achieve that, so just set that to 2. Then in controls, this is kind of where the bread and butter of this whole slide come in. We're going to set this to glide, and we're going to set it to about 175 milliseconds. Now, I have a BPM of 155, and I've found that to be a good slide for this song, but depending on your tempo and the style of your song, you can change that to fit how you want it, but that's just going to dictate how long it takes to go from one tone to another. So if I play like 2 notes on my keyboard here, you'll hear how that kind of affects it here. So if I go like this, that slide is a certain duration, and that duration is 175 milliseconds. Now if I made that like 300 and I did this again, you can hear it takes a lot longer, but because this song is fast, it almost just kind of slows down the song to have something go that slow. And also there's a lot of quick little blips that I have that go up and down, and so I need kind of a quick reaction time. So 175 milliseconds is going to give me that sound that I'm looking for. Again, all of these numbers can be changed and tuned for your specific track, but I'm kind of giving you the theory behind it, and you can apply it however you want. And I also have just a little bit of release, about 9 milliseconds, just because it fades out the 808 just a little bit right after the end, and that way you don't get like a clip, because if you set that to 0 and you let off the keyboard, there's a chance that you're going to kind of get a really harsh blip of sound coming in your mixer. You don't want that, so just a little bit of release will kind of ease that out instead of abruptly ending that. I do also have a filter, just because my 808 sample did have a lot of high frequencies, and you don't have to have this, but again, just for mixing in my track, I enabled that, and that gave me the sound that I was looking for. So now we can jump into the MIDI file here. We can see exactly what's going on. So as I mentioned, actually this should be one up, one down, sorry. Let's see, let me highlight here. This was like the original MIDI, I believe, something like that. And then I went through and I added all of these extra little secondary notes above and sometimes below the main bass, and that's going to kind of drag the pitch towards these notes here. So if we listen and we watch the playhead move, we can kind of see exactly what's going on here. So I can zoom in a little bit and you'll be able to kind of match the sound with what we're seeing. So now it might make a little bit more sense as to what's happening. And the advantage of doing it this way over the more, I guess, intricate way is that you can just kind of toss these notes down wherever you want. I can just press the B key, go into draw mode, and just kind of plop down these little slides wherever I want. And now we're going to have... Okay, it's ridiculous, but like it's really easy to throw together ideas and prototype a sound, I guess, really quickly with this. Again, you can use like the MIDI pitch bend stuff and do like little glides and whatever, and you know, have little slides that way, but it's just a lot more meticulous. And if you're trying to get a sound that's in your head and you want to get it down really quick, going through that whole intense process, I think, takes a lot longer. The way, and I'll show this in a later video if you guys want, there's a very easy way to convert this kind of rough way of doing it into that more meticulous way by just, instead of using a simpler, you make it in the simpler like this, and then switch the instrument here to a sampler, and then go in here and draw wherever you have these notes, little like pitch bumps and everything, and then you go through and you tune them. But again, that'll be in a different video, don't worry about that. So we can kind of see what's happening here. We start at C3, and then we go kind of half a bar, and then this note starts, so then it's going to start to pull that C3 up towards that F3, and that's going to kind of give us a little bit of a pitch rise. And then because we can see that this F2 is not under or over any of these other notes, it's not going to glide down to that F2. It's just going to go up and then pretty much abruptly go to that F2, and that's going to give you like a really nice kind of lift up and then like a big drop, which I think sounds really good. And then we kind of lift up a little bit, and then we go to the next lower note, then go down here, and then we have this what I'll call a transition note, where we start to pull this D up to a G sharp, and then it continues up to a 3. So it kind of, your ear starts to recognize we're going back up, and that completes this loop a little bit cleaner. And then this one's a little bit more ridiculous. We start at the C, then we pull up to the E, down to the C, an octave below, up to the A ends, and then it returns back down to the C, and then transitions again abruptly to that F, and that kind of gives us that, like, it goes up, down, really up, really down, F. So you can play around with this really easy. Like I said, if you just have that B and you just draw in wherever you want to glide, it'll just make some really ridiculous stuff there. And so it's really easy to throw down these slides in a very efficient manner. And I think the sound from this sounded really great. And it just comes down to moving these notes around wherever you want. Again, you can make these higher, and that will change not how fast it goes up to that point, but it'll change the ending pitch. So it's still going to take 175 milliseconds to go from here to here. It's just going to end a lot higher. So if I raise that note, again, you'll hear that the change isn't any faster, but it's a lot higher. So, or if I go down, which doesn't make much sense because we're going down again, but that's kind of the general gist of that there. And I think, again, it's a great tool and a really nice addition to a track like this because it adds a lot of intensity. If I just had this plain old beat or the plain old bass line playing in this beat, I think it'd be really dry. There's just no vibe to it anymore. You need those slides in some of these tracks, and I think that's an appropriate way to spice up this track. So that's really all you need to do. Again, I can make a more in-depth tutorial going through how to convert this into a more meticulous way so you can really tune those slides or change how fast they're happening in terms of each individual slide, instead of just, because right now we have one global number that dictates how long that slide is going to take. But if we, did it in the manner of the pitch envelope, we can make it a very short thing. We can use the Alt key and make it a different lead up to it, that kind of stuff. So it's a lot more in depth, and we can do that if we want to. So that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this is a great way to spice up whatever track you've got. So if this was helpful, hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, and hope to see you guys in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.